Hi and welcome. I'm Lisa. Thanks for joining me for another card making tutorial. While I'm sharing this card making process with you, I'll be showing you a few of the newly released items from Whimsy Stamps. I highly recommend you check out the Slimline Champagne Paper Pack. It's stunning. I'll also be sharing the new Sentiment Assortment Celebrate stamp set with you. So let's get started. I'm stamping the word celebrate from the Sentiment Assortment Celebrate stamp set onto a piece of the Slimline Champagne paper using Versamark ink. And first we need to apply anti-static powder to our paper. And this is my new find and I'm loving it. It's a refillable cosmetic jar with a sponge applicator. You're going to fill the jar with your favorite anti-static powder, screw the cap back on, and you're set. There's a hole that lets the powder fall down into the sponge applicator, and then you can just dab it on your paper or rub the powder over the paper. The best part of this tool is it's inexpensive. You actually get 2 jars for next to nothing. So share one with a crafty friend or hang on to it for something else. It keeps my fingers powder free, which I'm loving because this powder dries my fingers out something terrible. Stamping that Celebrate sentiment onto that gorgeous paper using that Versamark ink, then we're going to cover this using Simon Says Stamps Still Navy Embossing Powder. If you've ever wanted to try a navy powder, I highly recommend this one. It's really pretty and it has a nice sheen about it. I'm going to take the time to clean off any stray specks of embossing powder. No matter how much anti-static powder you lay down, you're going to get a few specks here and there. So I just use a brush to clean up around that area before coming in with my preheated heat gun. Now, when you get ready to heat set this, there's no need to shake the gun back and forth. A steady, slow pace following that melting powder gets the job done nicely. And once the powder is set, we're going to let it completely cool before moving on to this next step. I'm ready to start ink blending. I'm using a blender brush along with Memento Nautical Blue Dye ink. I'm applying the ink along the bottom of the paper, being careful not to move too far up that paper. I do want to touch quickly on this part of the process and why I stamp that sentiment first. Now, I've found it's so much easier to stamp and heat emboss the sentiment before saturating the paper with ink. It eliminates the dry time you need before applying the embossing powder over that ink blended area. And I promise this makes things so much easier because the embossing powder resists the ink and you can wipe it off with a dry, clean cloth once you're done with the blending. So now I'm coming in with Simon Says Stamp Rose Apple ink and I'm applying that lightly. I'm going to blend that down into that nautical blue. So I'm going to stencil some trees along the bottom of this paper, and what I'm going for is the look that the trees are rising up out of this ink. We're going to use the Snow Dangle stencil from Whimsy. This is the same nautical blue ink that I used. We're going to stencil the trees first across the bottom of the paper with that nautical blue ink. I'm going to start with a heavy pressure at the bottom of the trees and then lighten the pressure as I move to the top of the trees with the brush. Next, I'm going to offset the trees and use Simon Says Stamp Teeny Bikini ink. And I'm going to repeat this process to stencil the trees across the paper. I'm going to continue this process of offsetting those trees and adding ink. And each time I do this, I use less ink. So by the time I get to the last row of trees, I'm using the ink left on the blender brush. Now you can do as many trees as you want. It's completely up to you. I've just found that going in and filling in any gaps makes a huge difference in the way this comes out. This technique is really easy and it gives you great results. They're very elegant on this pattern paper. I do have 2 versions of this card that I want to share with you. I took this card that I'm working on here and I dressed it up a little bit by embossing a piece of navy cardstock with the diagonal dots embossing folder from Whimsy. And then I cut a 1/4-inch strip of coral cardstock and covered that with perfect pearls to add to the card. I did come in and finish this card off with some sequins. Now, maybe the blue is not your thing. If that's the case, just stick to the coral colored inks and emboss your sentiment with silver or gold. So let me know what you think of the new Slimline Champagne Paper Pack and Sentiment Assortment Celebrate stamp set in the comments below. I love hearing your feedback. For more information on the products I used in the video, you can click the links directly below and head over to the Whimsy Stamps website to check them out. Please know I appreciate you so much for spending time with me today, and until next time, please take care.